Coming up in our newscast tonight. Koreans wake up to the coldest morning so far this winter. The mercury plunges to negative double digits in some parts, including Seoul. The freezing conditions are expected to continue through the weekend. The last plenary session of the year for Korea's parliament is finally open after lawmakers reach an agreement in various issues such as voting on a revision to the Occupational Safety Act and extending the terms of parliament's special committees, including the one on political reform. The nation's consumer confidence bounces back up in December, fueled mainly by people's expectations of a higher salary next year. A welcome turnaround after dipping down to its lowest point in almost 2 years last month. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome, I'm Daniel Che. If you're here in the nation, bundle up with extra layers when heading out. Another option would be to try and stay indoors if possible. This morning, temperatures dropped to minus 12 degrees Celsius in Seoul. It's going to get even colder tomorrow, and freezing conditions are expected to continue well through the weekend. Choi Xiyoung starts us off.
We're seeing the coldest weather here in Korea so far this winter. Temperatures plunge into the negative double digits on Thursday morning, dropping to minus 12 degrees Celsius in the capital and as low as minus 15 and minus 16 degrees respectively in neighboring Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces. Even in the afternoon, the temperature in Seoul stands at around minus 10 degrees Celsius, and with the wind, it feels much colder. The mercury is expected to drop even further during the night, reaching minus 13 on Friday morning. A cold wave warning will take effect as of 11 p.m. for 11 cities and counties, and cold wave advisory for 20 cities and counties in Gyeonggi-do province. On Friday morning in Gyeonggi-do province, the temperature is forecast to plunge to as low as minus 19 degrees. In neighboring Gangwon-do province, it'll go as low as minus 20. The western coast in Chungcheongnam-do province, parts of the Jeollado provinces, and Jeju-do Island will also get snow, starting Thursday night and well into Friday afternoon. A heavy snow advisory is in place for the western coast and the Jeollado provinces. The weather agency has urged people to act to keep pipes from freezing and to take precautions to protect crops. Choi Xiyoung, Arirang News.
The final plenary session of the year is underway at the National Assembly. It didn't come easy, even being delayed by over 3 hours, with rival parties at odds over a number of issues. They reached a last-minute deal in areas of contention after crunch talks. For details, we connect to our political correspondent, Kim Min-ji, who is on the phone with us right now. Min-ji, do fill us in.
Daniel, the last plenary session of the year got away just over 2 hours ago. It was initially scheduled for this afternoon, but was postponed to give rival parties more time to work around their differences on some key contentious bills the ruling Democratic Party had hoped to pass before the year's end. Now, after crunch talks between rival parties this afternoon, they reached an agreement on some issues. For starters, they agreed to pass a revision to the Occupational Safety and Health Act, which will entail heavier penalties for firms when the contractors they hire are involved in accidents. Now, the need for a revision surfaced largely after a recent accident at a local power plant, which claimed the life of a young contract worker. That some 80 non-contested bills will be put up for a full floor vote, which includes one on giving child benefits with children aged 6 or under, regardless of their income, and lawmakers will also be voting to extend the terms of Parliament's special committees. But the parties could not narrow their differences on a set of bills aimed at boosting transparency and rooting out accounting fraud at kindergartens, so those will unlikely be put up for a full floor. Instead, the ruling party is planning to designate them as fast-track bills, which will enable the ruling party to put them up for a full-floor vote without sending them for deliberation in a committee where the main opposition would have held them up. On the fast track, the bills just need 3/5 of the vote at a standing committee meeting, which the minor opposition have together.
And Min-ji, I understand there was a precondition that the main opposition party has been demanding in exchange for cooperation on some key issues.
Yes, that's right. We can say the ruling party made a concession. The main opposition Liberty Korea party have been demanding House Steering Committee, which oversees the presidential office, to question top officials from the top office about a recent scandal. Now, it centers on the claims of a special inspector from the prosecution who says he illegally surveilled many civilians while working for the presidential office, which Changwade has denied. He has filed a complaint against the presidential chief of staff as well as top secretary for civil affairs for abuse and neglecting of their duties. Now, the House Steering Committee meeting will take place next Monday, and lawmakers will to question the top presidential officials on the matter. The president is also known to have told the top officials to go and attend the parliamentary meeting in order to pass the revision to the Safety Act. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, Minji, thank you for those updates. We appreciate it. Officials from the two Koreas held a groundbreaking ceremony on Wednesday for their joint railway and road projects. Seoul and Pyongyang agreed to move on with the project in April, but they've actually been making on and off attempts to link the transport networks for close to 2 decades now. Oh Jung-hee explains further.
Railways running across the Korean peninsula have been cut since the two Koreas' division after the Korean War. In June 2000, the leaders of South and North Korea met for the first time, and their meeting led to an agreement to restore the peninsula's western Gyeonggi rail line. And that's how this train station, Torasan, came into being in 2002. Located only 700 meters away from the demilitarized zone, Torasan is the northernmost train station in the south. But despite the two Koreas' grand goal of restoring the railway, few trains have traveled along this route. After a test run in 2007, cargo trains used to cross the border on their way to the now suspended inter-Korean factory park, the Kaesong Industrial Complex, but those trains only ran from 2007 to 2008. Since then, Torasan Station has rather served more as a transit office between the two Koreas than a rail station. We've come 56 kilometers from Seoul to arrive at this border station, and from here, there's another 205 kilometers to go to reach Pyongyang. But as you can see, the railway tracks here that stretch into North Korea are empty. South Korean trains that arrive here can't go any further. This is the last point on South Korea's Western Railway, but this station will also become the first train station heading to North Korea once the inter-Korean railways are connected. And this means a lot more than just increasing inter-Korean trade. It means that South Korea, which can only trade goods with Eurasian countries using shipping, will be connected to the continent's rail network, ending decades of isolation. The Trans-Korean Railway will be linked directly to the Trans-Manchurian and Trans-Siberian railways, which offer routes to other railways that cut through Eurasia. The distance goods have to travel would drop by 10,000 kilometers compared to shipping, reducing time and costs. North Korea is well aware of this fact. A senior North Korean government economist told the Associated Press the Korean peninsula has a great advantage in terms of location, and if Pyongyang uses railways from South Korea through Siberia, then other countries would prefer these rails to shipping. South Korea was able to join the Organization for Cooperation Between Railways back in June upon approval by 28 member states, including North Korea. Though the actual railway construction won't begin yet, and many more surveys need to be done, Wednesday's groundbreaking ceremony and Seoul's membership in the intergovernmental organization opens the door to future possibilities. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Consumer sentiment rebounded this month after slumping to a 21-month low in November. The nation's central bank attributed the slight uptick to people's expectations they'll earn more next year thanks to the higher minimum wage. But according to our Ko Ryun-hee, that positive development doesn't paint the full picture.
South Korea's consumer confidence ticked up in December after hitting its lowest point in almost 2 years last month. The Bank of Korea says the composite consumer sentiment index was at 97.2 points in December, up more than a point from the previous month. However, a reading below 100 indicates they're more pessimists than optimists about the economy. The central bank attributes the slight rebound to people expecting to earn and spend more next year, mainly due to the higher minimum wage. There are 6 main indices that constitute the Composite Sentiment Index, and the one specifically for prospective household income jumped by 2 points in December compared to the previous month. The index for prospective household spending also rose by a point. In South Korea, the minimum wage was increased by more than 16% this year, and 10.9% rise is slated for 2019. However, the overall situation remains grim because the Composite Consumer Sentiment Index has been under the 100-point threshold for 3 consecutive months. This is mainly due to people having low confidence about the health of the local economy. For instance, the index measuring sentiment regarding the current economic conditions has been stuck below 80 points since July. The index related to consumers' living standards also dropped due to the rising consumer prices, mainly food. Vegetable prices, for example, surged more than 14% on-year last month due to the lasting impact of the record heat wave and heavy rainfall in the summer. The central bank also pointed out that the index for prospective housing prices marked its lowest since February last year, meaning many people expect prices to fall in the near future. Ko-Roon-hee, Arirang News.
Recent data shows Korean exports recovered their momentum in 2017 after dipping slightly the previous year. But the fruits of that success may not have been shared by all, as conglomerates dominated the country's outbound shipments. Kim Ji-yeon breaks down the digits for us.
The wealth polarization among conglomerates and small and medium-sized companies has widened in terms of trade last year. Data released by Statistics Korea and the Korea Customs Service on Thursday showed conglomerates or companies with assets of more than $9 billion made up less than 1% of all 94,000 exporting companies. But those exporting giants take up more than 66% of Korean exports in 2017, amounting to $380.3 billion. That's more than double that of SMEs, which had $101.4 billion of exports in 2017, less than 18% of the total. Medium-sized enterprises or companies with more than $447 million worth of assets made up less than 2% of all exporters. Their outbound shipments amounted to $90.9 billion. By industry, more than 84% of exports came from the manufacturing sector, amounting to $482.2 billion, with much of this coming from the semiconductor and petroleum refining industries, where conglomerates dominated. More than 12% of exports came from the wholesale and retail sectors. All in all, the amount of exports last year increased by nearly 16% from the previous year, recovering to above the $500 billion mark to record $572.6 billion in 2017. By region, exports to Southeast Asian countries took up the lion's share of Korean exports in 2017, recording $149 billion, outpacing exports to China for the first time. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
2 government agencies plan to jointly provide funding of around $872 billion next year to support the development of regional industries. The Trade Ministry will provide $646 billion to help nurture innovative businesses and create jobs. The Korea Federation of SMEs will use the remaining $226 billion to help small and mid-sized firms. It's the second time since last year the 2 sides agreed to support regional industries amid a downturn in manufacturing. A detailed evaluation system will be fleshed out early next year. President Moon Jae-in is chosen as the Person of the Year in a survey by pollster Realmeter. He was the choice of 25% of local respondents. Runner-up was Park Hang-seo, the South Korean coach who led Vietnam's national football team to a regional championship this month. Third place was a tie at 9.9% between K-pop sensation BTS and trauma surgeon Lee Guk-jong, who helped save a North Korean soldier who was shot while fleeing across the border. Coming in fourth was U.S. President Donald Trump with 5.6%. The poll had 501 respondents and was commissioned by local broadcaster TBS. Seoul and Tokyo's military authorities held a video conference this afternoon to discuss the recent controversy surrounding Japan's claim that a South Korean destroyer had locked on to one of Japan's patrol aircraft, which the South Korean Navy flatly denied, saying it was using a different radar for its normal operations. The video conference was attended by working-level military authorities from the 2 countries, including Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff Director of Operations, Major General Kim Jong-il and his Japanese counterpart Hidehiro Ikematsu. According to Seoul's Defense Ministry, the atmosphere of the video conference was friendly and sincere as the two sides look to analyze facts and dispel any misunderstandings. The two countries have also decided to continue working-level consultations on the matter. A Chinese reconnaissance aircraft entered the nation's air defense identification zone today. The Joint Chiefs of Staff says the plane entered the KBIZ at around 10:20 a.m. local time from the northwest of Jeju Island, then flew into Japan's air defense zone before re-entering the Korean zone and finally leaving the zone at 3 p.m. The South Korean Air Force scrambled fighter jets to track and warn the plane. It is the 8th violation of Korea's air identification zone by Beijing this year. Seoul's Defense Ministry summoned the Chinese air attaché station in Seoul, Colonel Zhou Yuming, to deliver Korea's strong protest this afternoon and urged China not to repeat such moves. The zone is set up for the early detection of any trespassing by unidentified aircraft into the nation's airspace. China has said it does not recognize such air defense identification zones. More and more South Koreans have been winning their battles against cancer thanks to advancements in medical care and technology. The number of patients who made it past a 5-year survival rate reached record highs in recent years. Woo Soo-young provides an in-depth look.
More than 2 in 3 South Koreans that had been diagnosed with cancer have reached the 5-year survival milestone in recent years. According to data from the Health Ministry on Thursday, the 5-year relative survival rate for cancer patients diagnosed between 2012 to 2016 was 70.6%. That's 16.6 percentage points, or 1.3 times higher than the rate seen 10 years earlier. By gender, nearly 80% of female patients reached the 5-year survival milestone, but that figure was just 63% for males. Those diagnosed with thyroid, prostate or breast cancer showed higher survival rates than patients affected with cancer in the liver, lungs and the pancreas, although the numbers have improved significantly over the years. Experts say advances in medical technology and treatments have helped push up survival rates in general. But cancer still remains the leading cause of death in the country. It's estimated that 3.4% of the population, or 1 in 29 Koreans, suffered from cancer in 2016. Since 1996, the government has been working to clamp down on the disease and reduce the number of related deaths through 10-year national plans. Next year, Seoul aims to increase the number of support centres for cancer survivors with more programmes adapted to their needs, as well as introduce more checkups for early diagnosis. According to OECD data, South Korea has a cancer incident rate of 269 per 100,000 people, significantly lower than the OECD average of 300.3. Woo Soo-young, Arirang News.
A special exhibition displaying a range of North Korean items from postcards to cigarette packets is held in Seoul. They provide a glimpse of the graphic design seen around the regime. Hong Yu turns the spotlight to this unique collection.
Stepping into the exhibition, some South Koreans might feel a sense of nostalgia that takes the visitors all the way back to the 1960s. Blue, red, yellow, white, and black, the 5 traditional colors of Korea, fill the posters that were designed in North Korea from the 1970s through the late 2000s. Packaging for Paektu Mountain cigarettes, Sweet Fairy Drops, and Taedonggang beer, all designed with flat block color and smooth vector graphics. Showing daily items such as stamp sheets, postcards, comic books, and packaged food, the exhibition Made in North Korea graphics from everyday life in the DPRK introduces North Korean items not from a political perspective, but from the view of a foreigner. All these items were collected by Nicholas Bonner, a British national who visited North Korea in 1993 and continued to tour the country over a span of 25 years.
Every design these days is digitalized, but all the posters exhibited here are hand-painted. That allows people to feel the beauty that comes from the detailed posters. Also, the colors of the items and the gallery match to make it seem like it has one whole identity.
This exhibition was first displayed earlier this year at the House of Illustration Gallery in London, attracting the highest number of visitors for any exhibition since the gallery opened in 2014.
I came here because I was curious to find out how North Korean designs show its people's daily life and how they look different from South Korea's.
Posters like this that say, "Let's develop Korea medicine," or people's heritage, shows how North Koreans value the importance of sticking together as one, and how the North Korean government used images to build nation's pride. The exhibition is open until April 7th at the Hongik-daeangno Art Center in Seoul. Hongyu, Arirang News.
Various economic policies came to the fore in 2018. Income-led growth gained momentum this year with a sharp minimum wage hike and the introduction of the 52-hour work week. Our Kim Hae-sung has the details.
In 2018, the Moon administration raised the minimum wage and passed a measure to limit the work week to 52 hours as part of its drive to create an inclusive society where growth is more evenly distributed and more sustainable. The minimum hourly wage was raised by 16.4% to about $6.50, the biggest jump since 2001 to help boost the domestic economy by raising household incomes, which in turn would raise spending, investment, and production. The 52-hour work week also went into effect in July. The maximum work week was shortened from 68 hours to 52 to help improve work-life balance, potentially create more jobs, and raise productivity. Korea's work culture is notoriously demanding. Its working hours are the third longest in the OECD. But despite those measures, sluggish job growth and a widening income gap raised questions about the effectiveness of income-led growth. In the third quarter, the average income of the nation's top 20% was 5.5 times that of the bottom 20%, the highest in 11 years.
For the minimum wage hike to help boost domestic growth, there needs to be an increase in job creation to raise disposable incomes. But the wage hike had a negative effect on job creation because it increased the payroll burden on small businesses. Slower growth in the manufacturing sector didn't help either.
Amid a growing backlash over the income-led growth policy, a new finance minister took office in December, vowing to continue pursuing policies for innovative growth and a fair economy to nurture investment in new industries like smart factories, 5G, and AI. But, he said, there would be some policy changes.
We will strengthen support measures for the self-employed, and when calculating the minimum wage, we will also take into consideration its acceptability to the market, whether employers can afford it, and the economic ripple effects it might have.
Policymakers are working on changes to both the minimum wage hike calculation and the 52-hour work week, which are expected to be finalized by February. But experts say that for income-led growth to be effective, regulatory reform will also be needed to spur investment and jobs. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
In October, the killing of a Saudi journalist and the initial cover-up rattled the Middle East and the world. The investigation continues in Istanbul, where the murder took place. Our Cha Sang-mi turned to an expert based in Turkey for his insights.
The international community has condemned the murder of U.S.-based Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who had been sharply critical of Saudi Arabia's monarchy. What we know so far, on October 2nd this year, Khashoggi entered the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, where he was supposed to get his divorce documents so he could marry his Turkish fiancée. She waited outside for hours, but he never came out. After weeks of denials and shabby lies, Saudi Arabia admitted that the Washington Post columnist was killed inside the consulate by its agents. It was also confirmed by the CIA that the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman sent at least 11 messages to his closest advisor, who was in charge of the agents who murdered Khashoggi on the day of the incident. An executive producer at Turkey's TRT News says that the investigation is not moving quickly because of a complete lack of help from the Saudis.
So far, it's definitely been established that Jamal Khashoggi was brutally murdered inside the consulate. The investigations are still on, and Turkey is trying to find as much as possible what exactly happened to the body as well. Maybe they have come to a conclusion and it's not public already. But the fact is that Saudi Arabia has not been cooperating.
The Western allies of the oil-rich kingdom, including the U.S., strongly condemned the killing, President Trump in the beginning calling it the worst cover-up in history. But over time, he began defending his ties to the kingdom, a key American trading partner in the Middle East. The importance of the event, experts say, is how a superpower is willing to overlook the crimes of its allies for its own benefit. 차상미, 아리랑 뉴스.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, conditions today surely made everybody on the streets wishing they could go back home.
Yes, Daniel. Now, more regions have been upgraded one notch into warnings. Now, while the cold wave advisory still remains in the south. And meanwhile, the southwest of the peninsula is expecting quite a bit of snow starting tonight, especially over on the mountainous regions of Jeju Island. And Friday will mostly be as sunny, while Arctic winds continue to drag temperatures down into the peninsula. And at the same time, though, Tokyo will be under much bearable conditions. Tomorrow will be colder than today, with Seoul kicking off the morning at minus 13 degrees Celsius and Chuncheon way down at minus 16 degrees. The afternoon highs in Seoul is still in the negative territory at minus 4 degrees, but the wind chill factor will make it feel like minus 10. Now, this extreme cold weather will continue through the weekend, so stay warm. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
It's time for us to wrap things up. As always, thank you for watching.